Okay, I think we are good to start right now. Um, Good morning, everyone from California. Thank you for joining us today. I hope everyone is doing well and safe during this special time within our global communities. And I do appreciate you spending the time to explore the impact of COVID and the food industry media response and all the trends that will shape this industry post pandemic. My name is Gabriela, and I'm the program manager at Plug and Play Tech Center. I'm responsible for coordinating our acceleration program for the food and beverage vertical in Silicon Valley. For those who are not familiar with us, Plug and Play is an early stage investor, accelerator, and a corporate innovation platform with headquarters in Sunnyvale, California. We connect the largest corporations to the world's best startups through industry focused accelerator programs. Um, Here, we have my contact information in case you're interested in learning more about our innovation programs. We also have a monthly newsletter with activities and events within Plug and Play. So feel free to reach me out in case you're interested in our programs as well our newsletter. This is our agenda for today. We will start with our guest speakers, followed by 3 startups presentation. Our keynote will present for about 25 minutes and the startups will present for about 15 minutes. All those presentations will be followed by a 3-minute Q&A. Please type your Q&A questions in the Q&A box. We'll also be conducting polls after each presentation in case you're interested in connecting to the speaker. For today, we'll have Dave Dunnan talking about the food industry media response to COVID and the trends that will shape the industry post-pandemic. Followed by that, we'll have Tim Hall from Simporter, Alexander from Babylon Microfarms, and William Parker from Retail Data Trust. With that said, I would love to introduce you to Dave Dunnan. David Dunnan is a part emeritus at Kearney, a global management consulting firm based in Chicago. He is an experienced business leader and a consultant with significant global experience in agriculture, food, and retail industry. Dave, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time, and I'm super excited to see your inputs for this presentation today. I'm going to pass the word to you now.
Thank you, Gabriela. Turn the screen.
Yes.
Okay, let me just set up the screen here. Great. Well, thank you all, and I'm looking forward to having a chance to talk and then Q&A afterwards as well. So let me just pull up my screen. Here we go. So hi, again, this is Dave Dunnan. I've been in the food industry for over 40 years as an engineer. I've run food plants, managed companies, and consulted to large food and agriculture companies around the world. In the past 2 months under coronavirus quarantine, I've been working with several food companies, service providers, and startups. I'm actually a mentor on the Good Food Accelerator here in Chicago and work with several startups around helping them get their business going, as well as venture capital companies. And all of them are trying to navigate this new reality of the pandemic. So today, I really want to talk to you about sort of the new normal and consumers in this coronavirus world. You know, the presentation is based on some recent research and discussions with farmers, food industry experts, consumers, startups, and you know, trying to cover a broad subject matter around coronavirus and consumer and food. I realize I really don't have a crystal ball about the future, but I wanted to share with you some of the observations and some of the things that we're seeing in the marketplace right now. So we really started 2020, this year, with several strong consumer trends. Health and wellness was influencing consumer food choices towards healthier foods. Most new products were designed around healthy and simple ingredients. We favored local products, and new startups and entrepreneurs were producing novel new food items. Big food companies were seeing volume declines as consumers favored new tastes and products, and they often shunned packaged foods. We also based our buying on personal values, seeking out products that were sustainably sourced, lower food waste, organic ingredients, and promoting our lifestyles that were vegetarianism, keto diets, paleo diets, etc. Plant-based foods and alternative meat products were on the rise as we were slowly moving, and we were also slowly moving to a digital economy. And we were all in a sharing or gig economy where we shared cars, scooters, and freelance delivery drivers. My, how things have changed in a few short months. The coronavirus pandemic has forced us to shelter at home and take on new buying behaviors. Our health and the health of our families have become primary concerns for all of us in our food choices. Eating at home has uncovered new cooking skills by everyone, from making bread to cooking our favorite meals, and meal delivery services have flourished. Packaged, shelf-stable foods, after years of decline, are growing at double-digit rates, boosting the revenues of the larger established food companies. And now we've moved online at an accelerated rate, and we're looking for non-contact pickup and delivery options. And not knowing if we're going to remain employed, we're becoming more frugal with our household spending. But we are still in the midst of this long-term readjustment of our lifestyle and consumer choices. New habits and rituals are being formed through our continued shelter-in-place lifestyle, from a new appreciation of home cooking to more acceptance of takeout food, home delivery, and online purchases of food. We can expect these behavioral changes to last many more years. The massive shift in food distribution channels away from food service has created fault lines in the food system as distribution networks have been redesigned to handle increased retail formats. Restaurants, universities, and businesses shut down and no longer serve food in cafeterias. In addition, dramatic increases in unemployment due to the quarantines have impacted consumer buying patterns. And certain parts of the food supply chain have been hit hard by the contagion as it has impacted particularly the meat industry. Harvest and processing capacity were reduced as we have stopped the flow of migrant workers, and factory workers have been exposed to the virus. We have also found that we lack flexibility and resilience in our food processing centers, as years of consolidation and increased volumes have made these facilities vulnerable to shutdowns. Very few companies control a vast portion of our food processing capacity, from meat processing to dairy, grain processing, and even animal genetics. We have seen the entire food categories have changed their trajectory as restaurants shut down and food industry had to pivot to retail and home delivery. Globally, 88% of consumers surveyed are worried about the economy and 64% are worried about their health. Personal hygiene and cleaning products have seen the most growth over the last 3 months as consumers try to get control of their own vulnerability. Tinned foods, packaged foods, and some fresh items saw growth as consumers sought shelf-stable items to fill their pantries. Meanwhile, discretionary categories such as clothing, home decor, and beauty have declined. In fact, one of the biggest declines is in women's lipstick, is because we're all wearing masks, and so lipsticks is not being used as much. And alcohol sales have also declined overall as restaurants, bars, and stadiums close. But retail sales of alcohol has dramatically increased. But contrary to popular belief, we're actually drinking less because we're not made up for all the times we've been going to bars and restaurants. These purchase trends are happening around the world. And a recent study by Nielsen showed the patterns in Asia, South America, Europe, all over. So what do we think is going to happen post-coronavirus? No one really knows for sure, but recent consumer surveys show that some of the new behaviors will stick. Obviously, people will want to get back to restaurants, but they will do it slowly and with extreme caution. They will look for restaurants to implement new safety and hygiene measures. Outdoor dining will become popular through the summer months, but indoor air conditioning systems may have to change. People are going to go back to creating shopping lists for shopping rather than buying on impulse, which they have done in the past. And home cooking has introduced new generations to the joy of creating their own dishes and shown them that cooking is not as hard as they thought. Many expect to continue home chef creations well after the lockdowns are lifted. Our journey through this pandemic can be likened to any experience with loss and grief. Decades ago, Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, a Swiss-American psychiatrist, developed a framework for the 5 stages of grief. This framework is used to help people understand their own behavior as they go through profound loss and grieving. Initially, it starts with shock and denial. We say to ourselves, this is not happening. This is followed by anger, and we ask, why is this happening to me? Then we get into depression, often followed by, as people feel hopeless and don't know what to do. Then bargaining occurs as we try to come to terms with the situation. Maybe if I tried something different, it will go away. And finally, the realization that this is here to stay, and acceptance. I guess I better get used to it. We can apply this same framework to the pandemic's impact and how it's affecting our shopping and buying patterns. First, we started to stock up our homes in case we got sick, just a little extra in the refrigerator. Next, as we heard about the severity of the virus, we started hoarding cleaning supplies, toilet paper, sanitizers. After several weeks in isolation, we moved to comfort foods to relieve our stress: hamburgers, pizza, noodles, pho, food that made us feel good, great tasting food, but not always healthy. We're now starting to move from the comfort food into the next, which is the bargaining. And the bargaining stage, we're looking at this new normal, how to wear masks, how to physical distance. But with job loss and unemployment, consumers will be concerned about spending and budgets. They will look for good values as ways to improve their life, both financially as well as healthy. And then ultimately, we will finally need to focus on healthy nutrition to improve our immunity, as well as manage the weight gain from all of that overeating of comfort foods. We've seen increases in online searches resulting as consumers make them as well. Dramatic increases in searches for masks on the left chart in blue rather than makeup in red. And recently an increase in searches for immune system products and solutions in blue on the right-hand side. Immunity is important as we're finding that metabolic disorders such as obesity and diabetes have been found to be high morbidity factors with coronavirus. In fact, food as medicine is now an important topic discussed by many healthcare workers, nutritionists, and food companies. Coronavirus is showing that we have a much more severe impact with people with underlying conditions such as obesity, hypertension, and diabetes, all nutrition-based conditions. And people are looking for vitamins and supplements that improve the immune system, things like vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, B12, selenium. And people are focusing on other aspects of their lifestyle that can improve immunity, such as better sleep, stress management, hand washing. I mean, who would have thought that hand washing will become the normal and handshakes will disappear? Many food products show promise to help develop acute immunity, such as salmon, peppers, spinach, blueberries, nuts, tofu, turmeric, and fermented vegetables. As research continues, we should be better able to understand the correlation between foods we eat and the impact on the severity of the virus. We're already seeing consumers selecting foods that are healthier and provide some immune boosting properties. In fact, we've seen organic and natural foods in the last several weeks have a small uptick. They increased in the pandemic, but not as much as packaged foods. And now we're seeing people going back to looking at healthier foods as well. But the looming recession and economic downturn are weighing heavily on all food company strategies. While food and groceries are selling higher volumes, we expect that frugality and cost impact will become driving forces in consumer purchase patterns. Two clear sets of consumers are emerging: those with insulated levels of spending, often those that have maintained employment and remain shielded from day-to-day economic impact, and those who will be restrained in their spending habits due to unemployment, furloughing, or other coronavirus challenges. As a result, we can expect an increase in retail private label products, food basics, price and value shopping, and also a decrease in indulgent categories, premium products, and discretionary spending. Companies will need to adjust their brand messaging to communicate with consumers and their perspectives. They want to know how the product will help me. They're looking for compassion. They're looking for empathy. Health, immunity, and nutrition will become major focal points. After a brief spike in comfort foods, the long-term trend will be towards health. Food safety will become even more critical as consumers do not want to get food-borne illnesses at this time. Many households now contain extended families, and health of everyone in the family will become a priority, as well as catering to the different tastes of family members. We'll be looking for better value for money, not just cheap. And the words matter. We have a new definition of clean label to mean sanitary rather than just few ingredients. And will some consumers want to trade taste for healthy? There's going to be much more focus on label and ingredient transparency. And we need to learn what search words consumers are using to help them direct them to your brand. Remember, emotion and stress are high with consumers right now. People are taking care of themselves, and in many cases, taking care of their extended families as well. Brands that lock in consumers now and register with their emotions will have consumers for life. Retailers are responding to the new normal in several ways. Online ordering, click and collect, and home delivery are now mainstream. After years of slow growth, they've accelerated. Grocery stores will also need to be redesigned with wider aisles and non-contact payments. No more open buffet tables, and there will be increased packaging for fresh produce. Restaurants will see the most dramatic changes. Increased sanitation and physical distancing will be needed, as well as disposable menus and cutlery. Crowded bars will be reduced and takeout menus expanded. Both retailers and restaurants are asking their product providers to be innovative, try new ideas such as packaging, changes in ingredient, improved sanitary enclosures, and new approaches to marketing. Some examples of new retail formats already exist. Amazon Go in the US is an unmanned, cashier-free retail convenience store with camera technology to track customers and their purchases. Just walk in, pick up your product, and walk out. The rest is tracked by phone. Hand sanitizers and physical distancing make this an ideal format convenience retailer. I recently visited one of the stores in Chicago and I was able to get in, pick up a salad, and leave in less than 1 minute. So very easy, hands-free environment. In China, Bingo Box is also an unmanned cashier-free convenience store that uses sensor technology and barcodes to track customer purchases. With over 500 stores in 28 cities, they represent a new era for retail. Other retailers are using contact-free approaches for consumers worried about getting infected through food carriers. So orders are now placed in a designated pickup spot, such as the entrance to a customer's building. This prerequisite becomes mainstream and could offer brands new, untapped opportunities. Another great example is Farmer's Fridge in Chicago, startup operating over 400 automated fresh food vending machines in Chicago and New York. Farmer's Fridge offers hands-free purchase of fresh salads and noodle bowls through an artificial intelligence-enabled smart vending machine technology. They were initially set up at airports, office buildings, and then coronavirus hit, and all of that business went away. But the company pivoted to supply hospitals and homes. They are currently serving over 30,000 meals a week to hospitals. The hospitals love their food because they are fresh, tasty, but also hygienically packaged. Using their vending machine delivery drivers, they're providing home delivery to their local markets as well. And this may be the future of packaging as we see going forward. So what does post-coronavirus consumer look like? Well, they're going to be looking at their health and immunity and the health of their family much more, so they can understand exactly how they're going to buy products and meals. They're going to take personal accountability for health and hygiene. They're going to be looking for locally produced or grown because they have more transparency in the supply chain and processing. And they will want to leverage their improved at-home cooking skills, even though they'll still want to get outside. Education on online purchasing will still occur. Well, people will do research online, but they may look at pickup and delivery options as well. And marketing, word of mouth and social media are the main media messages right now, since in-store demonstrations and in-store merchandising have been curtailed. And so we'll have to look at the experience between retail, online versus in-store. Is it seamless for consumers? And so we're really reaching what is often called the new abnormal. Retailers are looking at redesigning their shop layouts. There'll be fewer stock keeping units or SKUs, more packaged food items. They'll eliminate a lot of the open food items like open bins or open salad bars, more online ordering and home delivery, and a lot more use of automation. For food service, restaurants and cafeterias, increased hygiene, disposable menus and utensils, but reduced capacity for social distancing. More takeout, and in fact, you'll see chefs actually creating meals for takeout rather than for plating. So where meals are always designed to be looking good on the plate, now they're going to have to look good in some sort of a box to be transported. And we're seeing more central kitchens where restaurants are coming together and sharing one kitchen to conserve resources and get some volumes of scale. And for consumers, we're now comfortable with online ordering, one-stop shopping, contactless payment. And we're going to be focused more on packaging and hygiene and looking at nutrition and immunity with products we're buying. Packaged foods will have a new growth potential, but we also have to worry about the haves and the have-nots, as people with means and people without means are going to be two different approaches, and we need to understand how to manage that and manage to both as well. So with the difficulties of this coronavirus, we were also seeing a tremendous amount of innovation, from telemedicine and remote working to online ordering and home delivery. At this time, it's hard to predict what will be the outcome of this pandemic and its impact on consumers. The only way we can get through this is by working together and helping each other understand this new normal. So I want to just end and just say, let's continue to work together and let's figure out innovations and ways that we can really help get us through this together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dave. That was a really interesting presentation. I'm gonna open some time for a Q&A now. So if you have any questions, please type in your question in the Q&A box and we'll be answering them. Okay, we have a first question here. Does the snack industry will grow?
Pardon, what was the question again?
Does the snack industry will grow?
The snack industry?
Yes.
It's going to be interesting, the snack industry, because we have actually seen a decline in, nutrition bars and things like that. People were taking them with them to lunch at work and eating them in the afternoon. And now you're working at home, you have access to a lot more food in your refrigerator. So people are eating salads, or they're getting a drink of milk or whatever they want to drink. So actually snack bars have decreased. Will they come back? I think that's going to be an interesting question. As offices open up, inside cafeterias are going to have to be restructured. And so we'll see more people bringing lunch to work, and when they do go to work. And so there may be a small uptick there in snacks. Healthy snacks are going to be very, very important. I mean, as I said, we're eating comfort food right now, but I think people are going to realize at some point they've got to get healthier, they've got to lose the weight, they've got to improve their immunity. And so those are going to be driving forces.
Got it. Thank you so much. Which industries do you see benefiting the most in the post-COVID economic?
Well, in the food industry where I'm focused, I think the industries, the whole home delivery industry is going to be important. Online ordering is going to be important. The other one that I'm seeing starting to happen now is this ability we saw with COVID of how fractured and how fragile our food supply system is. On one side, we've got farmers that used to supply restaurants, nowhere to ship their beets, nowhere to ship their carrots, nowhere to ship their lettuce, and having to just let them rot in the field. And the same thing is happening with pigs. There's no processing capability because the large meat processors have closed plants. And so pigs are being euthanized. But at the other end, I've got hungry people, and food banks are being overwhelmed. So connecting the farmers to the consumers is going to be an important aspect. And how do we find, where's the surplus processing capacity? Where can I find freezing capacity? Where can I find refrigerated trucks to take things from the farm to the consumer? These are all the important things that are going on that I think need to be ramped up, because we don't have a good connectability. We are very siloed in the food industry, very efficient system, but not very agile to significant changes en route to market.
Okay, thank you. That was great. We have time for a couple more questions. How does food quality perception change? Will the industry look at digital means of quality tasting of food safety?
Yeah, so the food safety issue is a big one, because if you look at food plants, they've always had two focuses. One was on food safety, against E. coli, Listeria, Salmonella. And the second was about animal hygiene, making sure the animals did not have any diseases, like African swine flu and things like that. Now food plants are actually having to deal with human hygiene, which they've not really dealt with as much. Wearing of masks, washing of hands going in and out of rooms, positive pressure processing rooms, all of those things. So human hygiene and how to keep the employees protected is a new aspect of food production, because we've seen in the meat plants, we're seeing in some of the processing plants, some of the farms where a high proportion of the workers get coronavirus. and all of a sudden you shut down the plant because you don't have the workers coming to work. And so that's becoming a new aspect of food safety. Coronavirus can't really be transmitted on food. On packaging, it's only limited exposure from what we're seeing. But the big issue is if we don't have employees in the food plants, we're not going to get the food produced. And similarly for truck drivers and things like that. So those critical pinch points in our food processing supply chain have to be managed from a human hygiene perspective.
Okay. Last question. What is your view on indoor farming as a way to increase resilience in the fresh produce supply chain?
So indoor farming, there's three types of multiple types, but the indoor farming, you can have what's container grower, fully controlled environmental control, which is LED lighting, controlled room, no sunlight, all the air is circulated using either hydroponics or organic soil grow with all the nutrients provided, no pesticides, no herbicides, no fungicides, and no bugs or anything like that. So great control, but high capital costs. The other approach is using what's called a greenhouse with supplemental lighting. So using a greenhouse, which is open to sunlight, and then using LED lighting to supplement the light during the winter seasons, et cetera. We're seeing a lot of large scale, both controlled environment and greenhouse grow operating now on the East Coast and the Midwest, et cetera, to try to offset the vulnerability to having all of our vegetables and fruits grown in California and being shipped across the coast. So you're seeing companies like Gotham Greens and Brightfield and Aero Farms and Plenty and things like that are doing large scale industrial indoor grow. It's still capitally intensive and it's a high use of energy with all the LED lighting, but we're seeing great innovations coming, and the innovations are coming out of the agriculture industry. They're coming from another industry which is seeing tremendous growth, which is cannabis. So as we're seeing cannabis legalized in the US and cannabis is now legal in Canada, great innovations on LED lighting, on different types of growing systems, on organic grow, on hydroponic grow, on nutrition systems, on automation and harvesting. So all those I think are playing well towards what the future could be.
Okay. I think we have time for one more. We see a lot of people choosing online deliveries, even going to the grocery stores now. How will it change the supply chain dynamics? Like PepsiCo has been putting a lot of effort in direct to consumer, which will also affect grocery stores. So how do you see this perspective?
We're already seeing the first step of that, where some large grocery stores are shutting down their grocery store and making them into mini warehouse hubs. So this idea, we talk about it in the restaurant industry, the dark restaurant, which is a restaurant that you close to people coming into, but you use the kitchen to supply other restaurants. And so we're seeing that happening with these mini hubs, where grocery stores that used to have people come into the stores are now taking a lot of that space and making it into a click and collect or a home delivery hub, where somebody picks the product in a warehouse style picking and then puts in the package, and then either the person drives up and picks it up or it's delivered to their home. So I see retail stores changing dramatically, where a lot more of the retail space will be made into home delivery pick and pack operations. And the actual store itself will be more around things where people want to see the product. Maybe it's the fresh seafood, or maybe the fresh produce or something like that. And a lot of the packaged goods are just going to be, shipped from an online order.
Perfect. Okay, we received a lot of questions, but we won't be able to answer every alive. But Dave will be here typing questions, typing answers in the Q&A box. And now we are going to move to the next presentation. Thank you so much, Dave. That was really helpful, really interesting. And yeah, that was a really good presentation. Thank you for joining us. Now I'd like to introduce Tim Hall from Simporter. Simporter predicts sales for new products before they go to the market with artificial intelligence. Hi, Tim. How are you? Thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, Gabby. Thanks so much for having me. It's always great to go after Dave, because I usually talk about how I've been in the industry for over 30 years in consumer products, but he's got that 40-year benchmark. So think of Dave as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I'm just the Luke Skywalker here. But I'm not the Luke from the young, old movies. I'm Luke when he got pudgy and gray. But Dave's forgotten more than I've learned so far, so you bear with me. We're going to be talking about supply and demand, and I'm supposed to say supply and demand chain, but it's not really a chain anymore. Let me just share my screen right now. And hopefully you can see a presentation that's coming up.
Yes, we do.
I like to be dramatic about this and say supply and demand in the age of disruption. We have tremendous disruption going on in the marketplace right now that we're all really aware of. And I'm the co-founder and CEO of Simporter, and we're an AI outfit. We developed AI software that provides greater transparency to consumer demand so companies can recover and grow in this space. We work in the food vertical, but we also work in traditional consumer packaged goods and in apparel, and pretty much anywhere where there's a big consumer presence around the products. That's kind of our focus right now. You can see some of our clients on the right here. A great quote, those of you from Stanford will be familiar with Dr. Kumar, but I love this quote: "What you seed in bad times will be harvested in good times." We are definitely in bad times right now, but we don't think this is a time to kind of hunker down and just hope for the best. Bad times are not new. We've faced them before from an economic standpoint, from a civil unrest standpoint, and all kinds of national and global traumas, and we've got through them before. I was referencing how I've been in CPG for 30 years. I started in CPG because I left college in '87. I graduated in '87, and I thought I'd be a Wall Street guy, but they had this untimely stock market crash. After that, a recession. Then we had the dot-com bubble, a recession, financial crisis, recession, COVID, probably recession. And so there's nothing new about this kind of turmoil. It's just painful to get through. But our hypothesis is you can recover and win market share in this market if you integrate AI into the supply and demand loop, not the chain, but the loop. We think it's really important to think of supply and demand in terms of a very continuous and changing kind of structure like a loop. There are two main differences that we see between them. Supply chains tend to be very complex. There's a lot of moving parts. And when they break down, like we've seen with COVID, it's like picking up the pieces when you drop a puzzle. Demand has a different challenge. The one word we would say about demand is it's opaque. It's hard to predict what consumers are into and how quickly they're going to change. And when you have this kind of turmoil in the marketplace, that opacity makes it even harder to read and react. The shocks on the supply chain side, we've all seen these in the press, right? So labor and logistics problems. I know Dave referenced this, you know, the pouring the milk out on the fields because they can't get it to the distribution centers, the problems in the meat packing plants, the problems getting labor to harvest crops, both from COVID as well as from immigration policies. So those shocks are pretty well known. Then there's other shocks that are happening to people with their production facilities, which we would call their tier one sources, whether it's a contract manufacturing plant or your company's own manufacturing sources. COVID is a huge problem right now, but there's other issues around different kinds of problems. This is a client's footprint for a certain brand we work with. And if you can see here, the red dots are their tier one sources, their manufacturing plants. In this case, the client had contract sourced these plants. And they had all these shipping lanes. They thought they had it all figured out. You know, they've got different ways to get goods to North America and Europe. But there's a lot of challenges as you go through this year. For example, we've had some political challenges 12 months ago. We've had some issues with tariffs and so forth, and some real economic and currency challenges. When the Chinese devalued the renminbi last year, that created a real issue for their tier one sources. And then infrastructure problems, even in a market that's well developed for manufacture like China, infrastructure can be a real problem. And as you migrate out of China into other areas, that can become even a bigger problem. And even in mature markets like North America, infrastructure can be quite a problem. So you've got all that complication in your supply chain. But when you go even further, you've got the tier two sources. And a lot of us in the food industry have challenges here. We might have perfectly good tier one manufacturing. Everything's all set, but we can't get a certain ingredient. You know, the chemicals, the emulsifiers come from China, or the citric acids coming from Latin America, and we've got problems with just one component of our finished good. The choke points, this is back to our client in Asia, the interdependencies and choke points for those two-tier suppliers became really problematic when the virus started looming and causing shutdowns throughout provinces in China. And you can see these kinds of issues in, even if you have perfectly vertically integrated domestic manufacturer in the US or North America, there may be things you're importing, components of it. This is 2018 imports from China. And you might have chemicals that you're reliant on, or you may have certain food product additives that you're reliant on, or even some vegetables, even though your main activity is going on in the States. And I'm not just trying to pick on China here. This issue of managing supply from T1 and T2 suppliers affects every region, not just China. And so what can you do about it, right? It's one thing to pose the problems, but in terms of the order of priority, focusing on the tier 1 issues is the most important thing to do. To make sure your own facilities and plants are able to run and you've got the right COVID containment and sanitation processes going through. Dave talked about that. It's vitally important. But just as important is to illuminate that tier 2 network. There's all these sort of tributaries and relationships that are important in your supply line. You've got to make sure you have sight of those all the way up the value chain. Diversifying logistics, that's the milk processor spilling the milk issue. How do we make sure that the product can get from the source to the consumer? And scenario planning, the best way to tackle this issue is to look at all the possibilities, what's going to happen, what could get worse as you move into recession and move into potentially global recession, but also to prepare for the rebound. As consumers leave quarantine, different product categories and different food items are becoming more popular and others are becoming less popular. But overall, you may see rebounds in certain pockets, and the companies that succeed seize on that. And one of the ways to do that refers to that other part of our loop, the demand side of it, is to identify what is really relevant for consumers now. And many of us tend to think of our product assortments in the 80-20 rule. Like we'll get 80% of our value out of 20% of our assortment. And the value might be sales, it might be market share, it might be margin. But the 80-20 rule is a pretty good benchmark, but it changes as these sort of social differences have come along with COVID. So what was relevant in your 80-20 mix a year ago is not relevant today. It's all changing. So you really need to get a handle on the supply, on the demand side change of it. And so as I mentioned before, the demand side shocks are more opaque. It's harder to see the problems. COVID is definitely changing behaviors. I think Dave captured that really well. But some of those are short-term and others are going to be long-term. And we have to discern if we're making product decisions, and sometimes we have 18 to 24 month lead times on new products, for example, we have to discern which of these things are going to be around. And that's where our software comes into play to kind of identify that. And then opacity gets worse when we don't know the future. And we know it's very likely we're moving to recession. We have to get a couple more quarters to see that, but we'll probably see that in a lot of major markets. We have record high unemployment today. We have riots today. And all of that uncertainty means what the consumer is going to do is harder and harder to see. So we use AI, that's what we're all about, to create transparency into this. And the way our model works is we just get massive amounts of data from 4 kind of big areas. Starting down on the left side here at 7 o'clock, we survey consumers all the time, quantitative surveys across different mixes of consumers online. Then we also collect point of sale data. We're a strategic partner with Nielsen, so many times we're looking at Nielsen category data, or we're examining other data, syndicated suppliers data, or our clients' data. But we start with a really robust foundation of understanding what's going on in the category. And then we apply social listening capabilities. We look at both consumer posts in social media like Facebook and Instagram and so forth, and also the product reviews they write on e-commerce. And we get a ton of data and insight out of that information. And then finally, search trends, where David showed some slides on what's going on and what are people searching now on Google. We look at that in a really methodical fashion to see how those relationships interact. What's going on in search related to social, related to sales. And that's where you find the really cool insights of what's not just what people are talking about, what their actual purchase behavior is going to look like. Massive amounts of data. In the month of May only, I went back and looked at what we were looking at with our clients, and we're still pretty small relative to some of the bigger players in this industry, but we were pulling data out of 9 countries in 4 languages. And we pulled last month over 12 million posts out of social, over 1 million product reviews out of e-com. We pull COVID data from the Johns Hopkins project and Nielsen and so forth. So a massive amount of data, and it tells us a lot of interesting stuff. The first thing it tells us is we're predicting sales for our clients' products. We're saying, okay, over the next 12 months, that product's going to do X or X minus whatever. That's the most important thing we can do for our place in this world. Before COVID started, those predictions we generated were 88% accurate when we look back 12 months. 88% accurate. Most of the industry runs around 55% accuracy. If you're using kind of a legacy tool that's predictive with all of the normal kind of changes in the marketplace between competition and consumer interests, we're significantly better than the competition. But after COVID, our accuracy rate did come down because that long tail data of what went on over the last few years is no longer really indicative of what's going on in the future. So we worked really hard to get back up and kind of climb back up into the 70% accuracy rate, and we have sight of getting even better. But the legacy methods that you may be using, you may have a wonderful SAP system, a wonderful Oracle system, great suppliers, but you just can't predict with the legacy methods what's going on because they're so reliant on the historical. This is what happened last June. This is some seasonality differences. The weather's different, but last June's going to look like this June. That's what the legacy systems tell you. It doesn't work anymore. And then just in the last month, our clients on average grew 16% May over April, whereas with legacy systems, that's really tough. On a rolling basis before COVID, we had much higher revenue compared to legacy methods. So we feel like by bringing this transparency in, we can see really important insights with the consumers. This is an example of what our software looks like when we're predicting sales for a product. This was a launch of a product that had done well in Western Europe, brought it to Eastern Europe. Our client was looking at Poland, and it was not successful. We were able to show them this early on so they could make changes to their launch. These are some of the trends. I know Dave covered a bunch of these. We're able to discern which are long-term and which are short-term. And so like right now, people are making healthier food and beverage choices, but we don't see that as a long-term trend, unfortunately. And this is a North American comment. Unfortunately, they're probably just getting ready for summer. We're coming out of COVID, we're getting ready for summer. However, an important insight is plant-based alternatives is a long-term trend. That's going to be around for a while. Ready-to-drink cocktails are really popular right now because it's time to celebrate for some people coming out of quarantine, even though we have tremendous issues in this country. That's not a long-term thing. That is kind of a short-term little spike. But there's a really interesting insight right now that we uncovered from starting with the beauty market of natural glows. People under COVID quarantine started posting Instagram pictures of no makeup. Here's what I look like naturally. Natural glow has become important. It started in beauty, it migrated to skincare, and we're going to find it elsewhere. Junk food binging has been really big lately. It's going to go back to the mean, to what it usually is. But immunohealth additives, Dave talked about this a little bit. If you can find ways to add immunity boosting things into your food products, whether it's whole foods or some kind of manufactured product, adding vitamins to it, that's going to be really great. And then on the retail side, I know we've covered a lot of this, but right now it's all about shopping safety. In the future, it's really about the seamless experience. And, it's about selection right now. Can I find my product right now? But in the future, it's more about curating the product. And I think it's very interesting what Facebook and Shopify have done with these sort of purpose-built immersive experiences. Just a couple more things. We help our clients predict value-priced assortments. This is very, very important going into a recession. It's a traditional way to weather the storm. We help pick pricing. We help pick pack sizes to understand what's going to really resonate with consumers. And we still do white space work. The market inflection means there's opportunities for new ways for consumers to be satisfied. And so, for example, in the laundry category, we worked with a big client, and by examining unmet needs in the category and things that were going well in other categories, we identified over almost 24 really interesting places that after COVID made sense for them to investigate. So to sum up, when you're looking at managing the demand side of things, you got to prepare for a rebound because that's going to happen in certain markets and you want to be ready for it. It's wise to revalidate demand for concepts that are in the pipeline, discern the trends that are long-term and the ones that are short-term, look at new value price segments, and then analyze white space for new opportunities. And our AI software lets you do that. If I could ask you to think of one thing about us or take away one thing about this, we can do a very quick demo for you. Just email me at tim@Simporter. And in 15 minutes, we can show relative to your category how we can really make a difference in the demand side of things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. That was really, really great. We already have a couple of questions here in our Q&A box. If you still have questions, please submit them. The first one is, what kind of online customer surveys do you use?
Yeah, so we'll do a consumer panel surveys where we'll go out to random selected panelists, and we'll survey them, and they usually run about 10 or 12 minutes, and we sort them based on all the things we want for national distribution, age, income, psychographics, and so forth. So it depends on the particular channel or category we're working on. We'll adjust that based on it, but pretty traditional quantitative survey.
Okay, perfect. Have you seen an increase in the importance of clean point of sale data with recent evolving trends?
Yeah, definitely. So the issue with point of sale data is the channels are so whipsawed right now that it's really hard to understand the data. So on the one hand, the data may have some extra noise in it just because of this sort of black swan event. But more importantly, we think is the behavior patterns might lead you, the data might lead you to think behaviors have changed in ways that maybe it's not permanent. And so we spend a lot of time, we have a bunch of data engineers who spend time making sure the data is clean. It takes a bunch of people to ensure the quality of that data, but also make sure we don't draw any false conclusions from it, because oftentimes it reflects very short-term behavior changes like traffic pattern changes because of quarantine and so forth.
Perfect. One more question. Which is your model accuracy for new food products?
It always depends on the category. So our best performance in a new food category was 85% accuracy. So we said it would do X units, and it was within 85% of X units within the first year. And that's a product that was new brand, a really new formulation of the food product that hadn't been seen before, you know, bringing stuff from other adjacent categories into our category.
Perfect. Okay, that was it. Thank you so much, Tim. That was a really good presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay. If you guys have any other questions, you can still ask them in the Q&A box. Tim will be there typing in any answers. Now I'd like to introduce Alexander from Babylon Microfarms. Babylon is an intelligent platform that makes indoor farming simple and accessible, enabling everyone to grow their own fresh foods. So hi, Alexander. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Gabriella. Great to be here. I'm having a little trouble starting my video.
Okay.
It says the host has stopped it.
Okay. Were you able to start now?
Yes. Hey.
Perfect. Okay, great.
Great. Well, I'm glad to be here. Let me just share my screen. Great. All right. Well, thank you for having me here, Gabriella. I hope my screen is now shown up. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Babylon Microfarms, and we are an indoor farming service provider. We enable anyone to grow their own fresh, sustainable produce at the touch of a button. We do this using prefabricated turnkey microfarms. So these are self-contained vertical farming units that we're able to produce and then link together to create farms of various different sizes. All they need to get started is water and electricity, and we run everything else through the cloud. And so this hardware and the technology we've developed to run it are sort of core components of our indoor farming service. And the way we've designed it is really focused around simplicity. So we control all of the complex aspects of growing crops indoors through the cloud. And using these prefabricated modules, it's incredibly effective. So the technology allows us to control the environment, the solution, everything that the plants need to grow with very minimal interaction from the host location. So all they're doing is planting, harvesting, and following instructions through an app. We're doing all the difficult stuff through the cloud. So our vertical farms use hydroponics. So the plants are grown in water instead of soil. They use 90% less water than growing outdoors. You can grow all year round, and the plants grow 2 to 3 times faster. So even in a small module like the one I showed you on the previous slide, you can get incredibly high yields throughout, and you're able to harvest every single week throughout the year. And the underlying thing here is it's a sustainable alternative that brings food production much closer to the consumer, and in our case, like right to the point of consumption. And so we help our clients reduce their food supply chain footprint. And in light of COVID and everything that's going on, we've really seen a significant increase in demand as businesses across the board are looking for sustainable, clean alternatives, and we're able to help them with that. So I'm just going to play a short video to show you all how this works in practice. And then we'll rejoin the presentation.
We started Babylon Micro Farms because we believe that fresh food is the best way to feed people. Our farms provide the freshest produce available for our clients by making it easy to grow it on site year-round, letting you enjoy nutritious, sustainable produce every day. No pesticides, no harmful chemicals, just fresh food. Our proprietary platform takes farming to the next level, using cutting-edge technology that is designed to be user-friendly. We take the green thumb out of the equation. Babylon has streamlined the process of vertical farming, so you can grow fresh, sustainable produce anywhere, all year round at the touch of a button. A single microfarm takes up only 15 square feet, but has the productive capacity of around 2,000 square feet of outdoor farmland. And since each farm is remotely managed by our team, anyone can grow incredible produce no matter their level of skill. To get started, tell us what your favorite produce items are, and we'll create a tailored growing program for you, and you can start enjoying fresh food all year. Operating your farm is simple, easy. You choose from our wide selection of salad mixes, culinary herbs, flowers, and microgreens, and we'll deliver them to you pre-seeded and ready to grow. Your personal account manager will make sure you have everything you need, from helping you install the app on your phone to providing your pre-seeded pods. When your seed packs arrive, all you have to do is place them into your farm and scan their QR codes using the app. Once you scan a crop, the app will take over, administering a unique growth recipe for that specific crop and let you know when it is time to transplant and harvest. Babylon makes scheduling harvests easy, while your personal account manager ensures you get the most value from your investment through custom programs. You can create unique, engaging community and team-building experiences, host special events, and enjoy seasonal menus. As you harvest your fresh produce, Babylon will send you new seeds and supplies to keep your farm running at maximum productivity. We can connect multiple farms to scale the productive capacity to suit your specific needs. The farms work in harmony together through the cloud to provide reliable yields all year round. Babylon is providing the technology for companies like yours to take part in a transformative food movement. Show employees, customers, and the rest of the world that your company not only values sustainability, but that you've taken the steps to craft your own narrative about the environment, food, and wellness. We value our contribution to a healthy lifestyle for our clients and a healthy planet. Let us connect you with one of our team members. You can reach us at info@babylonmicrofarms.com.
Great. So that video kind of summarizes how the service works for our clients. And it's been pretty exciting. In light of COVID, we have kind of had to reevaluate our model and where we fit into it. But we are now seeing a lot of demand from segments that we hadn't previously, as a lot of the ingredients I think is touched on in the first presentation. There's a lot of pressure on the supply chain, and so from this fresh produce categories, we're really in a good position to help businesses increase resiliency. So our focus as a company is on leafy greens, herbs. We do some flowers as well. We do a lot of research in Virginia, where we're based, on different recipes for crops. So, in order for us to have a very seamless service, we have to make a lot of mistakes. So we record growth recipes for all of these different crops. And then once we're really confident that they can grow under certain conditions, we then make them available to anyone that has that has our farms. So when they're growing, there's a much higher level of reliability than there would be otherwise. Another thing that's been really important to us is sort of transparency around the supply chain. And so for us, not only are we growing much closer to the consumer, so it's transparent in that sense, we are able to use the QR code tags to record an incredible amount of data around each individual crop and harvest through the farm. So we're then able to make that data available to our clients to present to their customers in a way that is sort of maximizing the transparency of their supply chain. And we've seen a lot of interest in this from like grocery, especially, where, for instance, a lot of the make your own salad bars are being removed because it's a health risk because of COVID. And we see the farms as a viable alternative for those, that space that's now unused, and we can provide really transparent, clean produce that can then be harvested as needed for customers in a really transparent way. For a lot of our clients, they're looking for reliability and quality. COVID has really just kind of put the whole supply chain under spotlight, which has really helped kind of demonstrate the value in a lot of the things that we're doing. So controlled environment agriculture as an industry is booming, but the industry as a whole is really geared towards these large scale plant factories, they call them. So that can be anywhere from 10 to 100,000 square foot custom built facility that's incredibly expensive and high capital costs, or greenhouses, which are also expensive. And so our model uses, we produce these self-contained vertical farming units in a way that's much lower cost, and we rent them out, which also reduces the barriers so that companies can actually take it upon themselves to start doing this themselves, which is a much different take to the industry today. Each of our farm modules is about 15 square foot. You saw in the video, it produces the same equivalent yield as about 2,000 square foot of farmland. And so it is a really sustainable and efficient means of growing. And so our clients are able to reduce their environmental footprint by growing with us. A lot of words on this slide, but this is basically just saying that for food waste and spoilage within the supply chain, it's an incredibly big issue. Up to 50% of produce ends up in landfill. For fresh produce, as soon as it's harvested, it's essentially decomposing. And then in this table here on the right, you're seeing how the nutrition is just decreasing from the moment it's harvested until you eat it. So by bringing food consumption closer to the consumer, you're not only reducing environmental footprint, but you are providing much higher quality and much better nutritional produce to the end consumer. We've also seen a lot of employers, we work with corporate offices, that kind of thing, who do this as a wellness tool. Having greenery indoors, I'm sure you've seen it, is really beneficial for employees. And one of the nice surprises we found is in the food service operations that we work with, it's actually become it's really popular among the people that work there. So pantry duty in like a restaurant or food service operation is usually one of the worst jobs, but when they have a farm, it actually becomes one of the most popular jobs because the employees like maintaining the farm so much. And so we work with our clients to kind of adjust the schedule and how they operate the farms depending on their needs. But there are a lot of clear benefits to bringing the farms indoors from a wellness and productivity point of view. I mentioned earlier, we do a lot of research on crop research, research on different crop varieties. So hydroponics in controlled environment growing is still really in its infancy. So there is a lot of blue sky space in terms of what you can grow. I'm sure many of the people listening here are aware of the lack of biodiversity in our current supply chain. And with that, only a handful of successful crops have been commercialized using controlled environment agriculture. So there is a lot of opportunity there to grow and test new crop varieties and figure out a way to grow them to the right yield and the right flavor profile so that we can then make those crops available to the general public and also through our farm. So it's a real benefit of our farm network because we're collecting a lot of data that all comes back to us. We're able to analyze it and improve our growth recipes. So we're continually learning how to grow new crops better. And also we're doing the research in-house. So once we discover a kind of recipe for a new crop, we're then able to offer it to our customers. So there's a real benefit of being part of this sort of networked farming system that we've developed. So our impact before COVID and even more afterwards is really across three lines, where we're having social impact by bringing healthy, hyperlocal produce to the point of consumption that's affordable and transparently grown. Both economically in every region that we operate, there are people who are learning how to operate the farms, and also there's a lot of wellness benefits too. And then of course environmental is a big one for us, where it's incredibly resource efficient and we're able to reduce the footprint of their supply chain. And in light of COVID, we're just seeing that this is something that is needed now more than ever, both what we do but also the industry as a whole. So these greenhouses, plant factories are really starting to disrupt the supply chain for fresh produce items, because it's crazy to have some of these lettuces shipped from Salinas to Boston, New York. It's crazy and doesn't make any sense. So a lot of these large-scale growing operations are having a disrupting effect in that supply chain, and it's for the betterment of consumers because they're able to access better quality, more nutritious produce. And in the same way, we're able to allow businesses to source their own high-quality produce. Yeah, a big one for us is around supply chain. It's kind of touched on some of the points I just made, but we're bringing the supply chain from grower to consumer in a matter of feet, as opposed to this long supply chain that is both environmentally wasteful, but also just expensive. And that's one of the ways that we're able to be somewhat cost effective against more wholesale price produce, is because we just don't have a lot of those costs associated with transport, waste, etc. So, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals is something that's really important to us as a company. And agriculture is sort of the elephant in the room when it comes to emissions. It's 70% of global water usage, 32% of global energy consumption, and 13% of the greenhouse gas emissions. And so what we're doing is a small part of the solution, but we're able to touch on a lot of these sustainable development goals, which in light of COVID are now more important than ever. And I think we're going to see a real change in consumption habits now and moving forward towards more sustainable long-term supply chain changes, of which we're a part. So that is it for me and our presentation. Gabriela, over to you.
That was a really good presentation. Thank you so much, Alexander. We already have a couple of questions here. The first one is, what is the investment level for each model?
So we rent them out. It's typically $799 a month on a 24-month contract.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. With the importance of transparency on the rise, has Babylon looked into utilizing blockchain technology for data sharing?
Yeah, we actually did look into it actively. We already record a lot of data. There hasn't been the right opportunity to do it or to justify the investment in doing it, but it's something we're looking at for the future.
Okay.
And if anyone watching has ideas, please reach out to me because I'm interested in that stuff.
Who are your current clients? Where they're based?
Sure. So we currently operate across Virginia up into Washington, D.C., and we're growing quickly, but our clients really are around kind of food service operations. So we typically focus on institutions, so a lot of healthcare, corporate dining, some senior living, that kind of thing. We're increasingly seeing demand from like community organizations and grocery. So those are ones that we are a little hesitant to go into, but in light of COVID, it's really become, you know, there's clearly a demand for that. So yeah, those are our main clients, and we do not sell to restaurants at all, which was also fortuitous in light of COVID.
Alexander, the value is plain to see. And on top of that, you talk about it being a cost-effective source. How much effective versus buying at local grocery store? Even considering the energy cost, as much green as it can get. What about the transportation cost of sending blocks?
Sure. So I guess there are a couple pieces to that question. One, like we don't claim to be cheaper than local sources, and we're certainly not cheaper than local wholesale sources. But the nature of our business and the nature of sort of production, mass production, we have a very clear path to drive the cost of our units down significantly. That over time, we believe that we will be cheaper than wholesale produce, but we're not right now because it's still an early stage venture. But generally speaking, for leafy greens, things like that, we'd like to say we're about cost neutral with like local, like organic sources. But for certain herbs and flowers, you know, we can save a lot of money because they're much harder to source and they're typically more fragile. So our method is just better for that. The footprint of a box is significantly less than the footprint of multiple refrigerated trucks and whatever else it would be. So we're not perfect, but it is a lot less. I think that covers most of that question.
That was very helpful. And a last question: do you plan to expand Babylon to other countries already?
Yeah, we get a ton of distribution clients. That's one of the biggest things we've noticed since COVID changed. The level of international inquiries we're getting is crazy, which is really exciting for us, although we're not quite ready to start shipping internationally. So next year is our goal for that. We're actively looking for distribution partners. But as far as our team, like our core team is focused on expanding across the East Coast of the US at this time.
Okay, that was all. Thank you so much, everyone. He will be answering questions in the Q&A. So if you have any extra questions, just please type in the Q&A box. Thank you so much. That was really, really great. And last but not least, we have William Parker from Retail Data Trust. They are a food safety software to prevent the sales of recalls and save lives. So I welcome William, and I'll pass the word to you. Thank you so much for joining us today, William.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us. We're really excited to be here and talk about this new standard in food safety. Kind of piggybacking on some of the things that David talked about. Consumers are definitely changing their eating behaviors, and it's significantly impacting a lot of the food safety efforts that were already kind of strained prior to COVID. Let's see here. So Retail Data Trust, we're a SaaS platform that helps brands and retailers actively monitor and flag recalled products in the lane. We believe that there's enough kind of hardware infrastructure that currently exists in the retail grocery ecosystem that if we just actively monitor and connect those data points, we don't need to really introduce a lot of new hardware and software. Before we get into kind of what we do, as a general question, are we sure what we eat is safe? Everybody, pre and post COVID, we kind of walk into grocery stores and we pick things up off the shelves and we assume that there's enough due diligence throughout the food supply chain networks to ensure that what you're buying is safe. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. When we're talking about grocery, big box, mass drug, convenience, and value channels, over 3,000 people die every year. Hundreds of thousands of people are hospitalized because of contaminated foods. And this is when the system was working at its best. And there's a lot of efforts to kind of fix this, but unfortunately, we're not quite where we need to be. In addition to the human costs, there's also significant financial losses for brands. Brands will spend anywhere from $10 to $100 million per recall. It's pretty burdensome to brands, especially when a lot of times brands don't have a lot of say in how recalled products are pulled from shelves. There's a real large disconnect between brands and retailers, and it's really seen in recalled products. Finally, the FDA and USDA is getting a lot of pressure from Congress to enact some of the FSMA regulations that were passed several years ago, and this is resulting in CEO criminal liabilities. It started with CEOs that knew that they were selling recalled products. It's now moving into CEOs that don't necessarily know they sold recalled products, but their bad infrastructure contributed to the sale of recalled products that led to human death. So the FDA, USDA isn't really tolerating this anymore. And unfortunately, this problem isn't getting better. It's getting worse. There's lots of reason for this we can go into at a later point, from the consolidation of our manufacturing processes to the increase in allergen-related recalls. But as I said, the lawmakers are really pressuring the FDA and USDA to start leveraging the powers that they have. And we, on a positive note, we are seeing retailers starting to kind of take this on. Walmart issuing their mandate to suppliers. We're seeing brands investing in a lot of food safety solutions. And a lot of this because it does impact their ESG scores. But unfortunately, not a lot of these efforts are translating to changes at the grocery store. And so, as I said, that was when it was working the best. When retailers still had difficulties pulling things off shelves. What happens now that we introduce COVID to this kind of equation? As David mentioned earlier, we're seeing a lot of new habits from consumers. How are these habits going to change food safety and food recalls? Because these new habits are influencing consumer behavior and their purchasing habits. And then finally, manufacturers are definitely being, hurt by COVID, with a lot of their employees being, coming down and being sick. This is also happening with the USDA and the FDA. A lot of the regulators are having issues with inspecting products. So, starting with kind of the new habits, how are these new cooks doing at home? Are you talking about people who might not have ever really cooked for themselves? I used to live in New York, and I've got lots of friends who had very small, very empty fridges. So I'm a little nervous at what they're doing right now. Especially when we see reports coming from several hospitals. They're seeing anywhere from 40 to 600% increases in burn victims from home cooking fires. So if they don't know what to do with burning, how are they handling their food? The CDC has a few dozen of these kind of individual examples. A woman who poured bleach all over her food and then got sick and wondered why. So we're seeing new people engage with products they've never touched before. This increase in food at home, we start to ask simple questions. Do you rinse a chicken before you cook it? The CDC says no. I'm sure a lot of people, some even on this call, didn't really know that. Rinsing a chicken before you cook it spreads salmonella all over your kitchen. Who are consumers going to blame when this happens? And so a lot of these, new consumer behaviors and habits are going to put a lot of pressure on an already exhausted food safety ecosystem that was, costing brands millions and millions of dollars. They're now going to begin getting blamed for things that they might not have had much control over. Going to some of the buying behaviors, we are seeing frozen food surging. We're seeing, particularly in the chicken category, so people who had not bought these foods in the past are now buying these foods that tend to be pretty susceptible to recalls. They make up a lot of historical recalls. It extends to our fresh protein and pantry stocking. And so one of the biggest fears right now is, some of those recalled food items might be sitting in the store. Now they're sitting in the store and in our pantries. And so what happens when you don't really cook, you go and stock up, and now your pantries are full of items. The COVID restrictions get lightened, you start eating out, but all these items are still sitting in your pantry, they're still sitting in your freezer. If they come under a recall, you're not really paying attention. Is there a way for us to actually talk to those consumers? And then finally on testing, manufacturers are doing their best, but resources are certainly strained. The FDA and USDA are slowing a lot of their inspections. And so, going back to even when things worked, they didn't really work. And so what is that going to mean in the future? Only time will tell. So, what can we actually do about all these problems we're seeing? So what Retail Data Trust does is we integrate directly into the point of sale and back office servers for brands and retailers. So brands and retailers can actively monitor purchasing of products. This helps in a number of ways, particularly in food safety. So, how do we build a more proactive food safety network? Our current food safety network is very reactive. Oh no, we had this massive recall, rip it off the shelves. What are we going to do about it? But how do we integrate directly into the point of sales? Well, that's exactly what we do. So that the moment that the FDA, USDA, or a brand issues a recall, we can flag those products at a point of sale. The cashier can, pull it off the belt. It doesn't get to go home with the consumer. Next, enabling outreach. So we're actually partnering with some fintech providers so that we can connect to consumer card data. We also connect with food safety programs that we've developed that work very similarly to loyalty systems. You type in your phone number as you check out. We'll send you a text message if a product that you purchased is now under recall. This way, those products that you just bought in bulk that are sitting in your pantry, Tyson's and General Mills can send you a text notification, begin that dialogue, get those products out of your house, and then begin the rebuilding of trust and loyalty through rebates and other means. Finally, one of the most important things is connecting data. Most brands don't really have a view into their data, and so all these upstream efforts like IBM Food Trust and Food Logic that are doing really great work to connect the upstream supply chain onto blockchain databases. We can connect into those databases as well. We're working with a few partners right now. And how do we get the consumer data so we can get a full end-to-end picture of what that supply chain looks like? We really just want brands and retailers to make one simple promise. We never sell recall products. It's a lofty goal, but I think with our current hardware infrastructure, we can do it. It's just all about connecting those pipes. And it is not easy. We don't pretend that it is, but it's doable. We're working to do that every day. Right now we are scaling into Q3, doing some more localized testing with a few new brands and retail partners, as well as blockchain and some data partners. So if you guys have any questions, definitely let me know. We are always looking for more brands and retailers to join the pilot. The great thing about leveraging data adapters and software solutions is it's relatively easy to scale. And so the more the merrier. I'd love to take any of your questions.
That's great, William. Thank you so much for your presentation. We already have a couple of questions here. First one is, what makes Retail Data Trust unique, and what kind of valuable data can be collected?
Great question. It's very difficult to get into point of sale systems. Right now, we can work with about 95% of all the tier 1 point of sale providers, Retalix, IBM, and so on. It's incredibly difficult to manage these large data sets and volume. And so, right now we are doing data sharding to help manage the current data flows. It's one of those things where if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. The solution seems so simple. Fortunately, our team's been at this for the last 17 years, and so we have those adapters that can connect right to the point of sale. Onto what valuable data is being collected. We can monitor, actively monitor all current scans, full basket sizes, all the way into what cashier was at that register at that given time. That way we can give retailers very powerful operational tools as well.
Perfect. How does a brand get involved in the pilot program, and how hard it is to implement at retail locations?
Great question. So at retail locations, our onboarding process is typically 6 to 12 weeks. It really depends on what point of sale the retailer is using and the experience of their IT staff. Unfortunately, since the team's been doing this for a while, we've done everything from pure cloud-based systems all the way into high touch point of sale systems. If you really want to build a solution that's national and global, you really have to be able to integrate into everything, and that's our team's mission. I really am optimistic about approaches like Amazon's frictionless stores. The only difficulty is what happens when you're living in Anaconda, Minnesota, and you only get internet every couple hours. What happens when that goes down? Does that mean your food safety system goes down? So it really depends on the sophistication of the retailer.
Got it. And the last question, what hurdles do supply chain networks have in connecting with consumers?
Right now, it's a lot of just disconnections. So most brands and retailers and supply chains aren't necessarily incentivized to share a lot of information. And in the past decade or so, I've really seen that change to where now they're incentivized. A lot of that has to do with them combating a lot of the online pressures. I did a lot of work with Procter and Gamble, and I remember sitting down with Walmart and them trying to figure out how do we better share data. The biggest problem is now that we want to share this data, the current infrastructure doesn't make that easy. And so we spent so long working in silos, breaking those down become incredibly difficult. So that's why our team's built an incredibly frictionless solution. So we don't have to do millions of dollars of new hardware investment. There doesn't need to be these massive changes in the way we do things. Consumers don't have to use QR codes or adopt new behaviors. My mom is not going to learn a new way to buy groceries overnight. So let's work with the way she currently buys groceries and keep recalled products out of her home.
That was very, very helpful. I think those were all the questions, and thank you so much, William. That was really, really great. With that, we conclude all the presentations for today. I think those presentations were great. It gave we could see a perspective across the whole food value chain. So I really appreciate all of you that joined us and took the time to explore those topics, as well are really good panelists. So it was an honor working with you. And yeah, if you have any questions, reach me out. And if you'd like to get connected, you'll have my email address. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.